I'm not sure if many remember, but last week I spoke a bit about not so much the whole situation in our world today is right and wrong, but it's kind of moved beyond that to good versus evil. And I said something along the lines of, how obvious that good versus evil is playing out on our screens day in and day out lately. I mean, even our world, every sexual sin and twisting of that good and God-given gift is on offer everywhere today. And anybody who holds to any sense of tradition or of morality, they're pretty much shunned and questioned to the side. For example, in so many families today, in Ireland, those who are practicing Catholics and who are doing their best in that family to live by the Lord's commandments, they can be very easily ignored and sometimes even divided by other family members who do not practice that faith. Even though they may have stood publicly within a church, in front of the priest, in front of their friends and their family, and promised to hand on the faith to their children whom is being baptized at that moment, or indeed the vows they made in front of everybody and the priest and God at the day of their wedding in the church. But you see, any public sign of affection towards the Christian message or towards the commandments of the Lord, indeed the teachings of the church, they're a big no-no for many of them, all because of the culture that we live in, a culture that puts immense pressure on all of us to walk very much a different path than what is shown by the Lord in the Gospels and in His church. And Paul, in our second reading here this morning, today, he's talking about the same thing, because he's writing his letter to the people in Corinth, to the local church in Corinth, because they're having the same problems there, where the commandments of the Lord, they have broken down, and the wickedness that kind of flows from that breakdown, it's infecting the entirety of the community. See, everybody, that's why sin, no matter how small or how secret we may think it is, it does influence the wider community of where we're living. I hear this attitude and this saying the whole time. I'm sure all of you do as well. Sure, as long as he or she is happy, once they're not hurting anybody, let them do whatever they want or whatever they feel. That is nonsense, if we're being honest. Think about it. Whatever we do in secret, it fuels our minds, okay? And that's obviously going to affect our thinking and our words and how we see the world and how we see things, which inadvertently, it then pours into the community through our words and our actions, which starts to entice other people to do the very same thing. And see, St. Paul today in our second reading, he's reminding everybody in Corinth and us today that our moral life, it's caught up in the reality of good and evil, and how as followers of Jesus, we're all called, everybody, to be ambitious for the higher gifts of love, so as to safeguard our hearts from corruption. And that the way of Jesus Christ, that's the way we get rid of the evil and the wicked inclinations in our hearts. Those things that tend to pull us away from Jesus, to pull us away from His church, because He has called us into a new life. And wickedness and evil, they want us to pull us away from the new life that Christ has brought you and me, the new life that He calls all of us to partake in, to be the new wineskins, as He puts it, yeah? Because, you see, everybody, what Jesus gives us, it's so new, it's so precious, and it's so transformative that it does require a fresh and a new way of living. I see, everybody, now we can begin to see where the commandments come into play, where the teachings of the church come into play, and having a deep prayer life, all of which, everybody, they safeguard us to remain faithful as best we can in this world to the new way of living that Christ has brought us. Because, look, let's face it, so many of us, we face a constant pressure to compromise the faith, to compromise the teachings of the church, so as to be able to fit in. Yeah? to make the church or to make Jesus more relevant, more attractive in today's world. But that's how wickedness and that's how immorality starts to creep into our hearts. Because otherwise, when we start mixing, say, our old wicked ways and immorality with the new life that Christ has called all of us to live, we run the risk of ending up like the scribes and the Pharisees in this morning's gospel, who are unable to see the goodness of God at work and see it instead as a wrong or as an evil action. And that's very dangerous ground. Everybody, you and I, by the arrival of Christ into our world and subsequently by our baptism, we've all been called to a higher way of living, a virtuous way of living, by doing our best to live by the beautiful and life-giving commandments of God, by being ambitious for God's love in this world, to be prayerful men and women, to be compassionate with a peace and a contentment in us, especially when things are tough, of having a life of joy, hope, and a love for life, all of which are contagious and all of which are sourced in having a personal relationship with Jesus. My friends, we destroy evil and we destroy wickedness both within ourselves and the wider community by doing good, but by especially being the men and women God has called you and me to be.